Today we are doing 6th grade math, chapter 4, lesson 6. We are dividing whole numbers by fractions. We're going to start this one off with vocabulary today, which is reciprocals. We're going to go based off what the book says, and then we're going to completely change it because the book makes it a little bit more confusing than it needs to be. So here is the definition that the book gives you. Any two numbers with a product of 1 are called reciprocals, meaning if you multiply those two together, they become 1. I don't like that. So here's the explanation of what a reciprocal actually is. A reciprocal, when you're talking about fractions, is actually flipping the fraction completely the other way to where the denominator becomes the numerator and the numerator becomes the denominator. So 1/2 becomes 2 over 1. Now what they mean by the product is 1 is the following. 1/2, the reciprocal being 2 over 1. If I were to multiply these, this would become 2 over 2 or 1. So anytime you take a reciprocal of a fraction and you multiply it by the original, it will always be 1. It doesn't matter what fractions they are, they will always be 1. For example, let's use 2/3. The reciprocal of 2/3 would be 3 over 2. We flip the fraction. We're going to multiply straight across, which would give me 2 times 3, which is 6, and 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 over 6 is 1. So, in short, I know that the textbook has its own definition of reciprocal, but a reciprocal is when you flip a fraction, changing the numerator and denominator to be opposite. AKA, the numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes the numerator. So here is my example of a fraction. My fraction would be 3/4. The reciprocal is us flipping the fraction, completely turning it differently so that the numerator, which is 3, becomes the denominator, and the denominator, which is 4, becomes the numerator. So the reciprocal of 3 over 4 would be 4 over 3. This is extremely important in today's lesson because anytime we divide with decimals, the reciprocal is going to come in. So here's an example question straight from the book. 3 divided by 1/2. So we've already talked about multiplying fractions. We have not yet talked about dividing by fractions. But dividing by fractions is basically the same as multiplying. There's just one other step. Before I can divide 3 by 1/2, I have to get the reciprocal of that 1/2. So anytime you're dividing by a fraction, we are going to flip that fraction. So this will actually become 3, and this will be 2 over 1. And once I flip it and take the reciprocal, this is no longer a division problem. It is now multiplication. So 3 divided by 1/2 becomes 3 times 2 over 1, or since we know 2 over 1 is just 2, it will equal 6. So let me walk you through that process one more time, and I'm going to label it out. 3 divided by 1/2. 3 comes straight down. The first number is going to come straight down, so it'll still be 3. This is going to flip and become 2 over 1. And the division symbol becomes multiplication. So these little arrows are what I use to teach students. So we drop the first number down, we change the division symbol to multiplication by shaking it up, and then we flip the divisor the number we're dividing by, and we flip that fraction to become 2 over 1. So this becomes 3 times 2 over 1. If you wanted to really put 3 over 1, you could. This would still be 6 over 1, which would just be 6. Now, let's actually break down what this means. This is asking how many times can 1/2 fit into 3. So here's 3 boxes. Hopefully they'll be all identical. That last one's not. That's going to bother me. Let's get it as close to identical as possible. It's close. So this would be 3. If we were to divide 3 by 3, we'd find out, that if it's in 1 time. If we were to divide 3 by 1, it goes in 1 time. This is asking us how many 1/2s or halves can go into 3. 3 is made up of 1, 2, and 3. 3 holes. Those holes each have a half. So if I were to split each one into half, so this being 1/2, this being 1/2, this being 1/2, and so on, you'll notice that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 halves. So 3 divided by 1/2 is still 6. And then again, we do the process like I showed you with the arrows. That one comes straight down. This we shake up and becomes multiplication. And we flip this to become 2 over 1. If you want to put 3 over 1, you can. Or if you want to get rid of the 2 over the 1, you can. This still becomes 6 over 1, or just 6, which is what we got when we did our 3's and figured out how many halves there were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 halves. Now this is basically today's lesson. This is the first baby step. So every single problem we do today is going to be a division problem with a fraction involved. And they're going to actually ask you for reciprocals. So in your homework for questions 1 through 5, they're going to ask you to find the reciprocal of each number. You are literally flipping those numbers over. So the 7 goes on top, 2 goes on bottom, 9 goes on top, 1 goes on bottom. And this one, of course, you'll have to simplify because it's 9 over 1. It becomes just 9, and so on. If for any reason you have a trick question like this, where they ask you to find the reciprocal of a whole number, just be aware that a whole number is over 1. So the reciprocal of 3 would be 1/3. So let's look at some more example problems. This is going to be a pretty straightforward lesson today, but we're still going to go ahead and talk about this. Example number 1, find the reciprocal of 2/3. Just flip 2/3, and it is 3 over 2. Find the reciprocal of 1/8. You flip it, so 8 is on top, 1's on bottom. You simplify it, it's just 8. And find the reciprocal of 5. We just talked about this type of thing. 5 as a fraction would be 5 over 1. When you flip it, it becomes 1 over 5. And my answer would be 1 over 5. This is doing this whole thing to where it wants you to do 5 over 1 and 1 over 5. They still becoming 5 over 5, which equals 1. It's just a lot. It's too much. It's too much stuff for you to just flip a fraction when they ask you for a reciprocal. They're making something more confusing than it needs to be. So again, a reciprocal is when you flip a fraction to have the denominator in the numerator and the numerator in the denominator. If it's a whole number that you're finding the reciprocal for, put that whole number over 1 and flip it. So, to find the reciprocal of each number, if you guys really want to pause right here, you can, and then do the questions. And I'll walk you through it. And these are going to be some of the easiest questions you've done all year. So, A, 3 over 5. When we flip it, it becomes 5 over 3. Now, pause time. This is a improper fraction, or an improper fraction. Some of you guys decided to call me out on that. This is an improper fraction. We need to simplify this So I will be doing 5 divided by 3. 3 will go into 5 one time. When I subtract, I will have 2. So my answer here is not as simple as just flipping it over. It's going to be 1 and 2/3. So I do need to get in the habit of simplifying. So it's not just 5 over 3. It's going to be 1 and 2/3 technically. B, 1 over 3 would be 3 over 1. And we simplify it just down to 3. And C, 11, again, whole numbers over 1. So this would become 1 over 11. And that's it. Now, again, we do the reciprocals because we are going to be multiplying after we change our division problem into a multiplication problem. So we're going to use the example 5 divided by 2/3. Again, our 5 will come straight down into our new equation. The multiplication or the division symbol has to be shaken up to become multiplication. And we will be flipping or taking the reciprocal of our divisor, and this will be 3 over 2 instead of 2/3. I'm going to put the 5 over 1, and I'm going to multiply straight across because I see 5 and 2 have no common factors, and 3 and 1 have no common factors. So I'm going to multiply straight across. This will give me 15 over 2. 5 times 3 being 15, 1 times 2 being 2. This is an improper fraction. We need to simplify. I'm going to divide 15 by 2, which will equal 7. 2 times 7 is 14. When I subtract, I'll have 1 left over. My answer is 7 and 1/2. And I know that 1/2 is simplified because the numerator is a 1. And that's it. So 5 divided by 2/3 is equal to 7 and 1/2. That's where most of your work is going to come in, is going to be the simplification process. I know technically, if I ask you what is the reciprocal of 2/3, if you say 3 over 2, technically you're right. It is 3 over 2. This is still an improper fraction. So if the problem does not say in simplest form, they just ask you what the reciprocal is, technically you're right. And if this shows up on your test asking what is a reciprocal of 2/3 and it doesn't ask you for it in simplest form, I will accept 3 over 2. If the question does say what is a reciprocal of 2/3 in simplest form, we need to simplify this, which would be 3 divided by 2, or 1 and 1/2. All right, let's do a few other problems here, and then we'll call this one a video. Find 2 divided by 1/3, right in simplest form, and we just talked about this. When this comes in, it becomes a big deal because we have to make sure that we put it in simplest form. So 2 divided by 1/3. First number comes down. It'll still remain 2. I'm going to use different colors. Division symbol gets shaken up, becomes multiplication, and we flip or take the reciprocal of our divisor. This will be 3 over 1. And instead of me putting it over 1, I'm just going to make it 3 because this will make it easier. 2 times 3 equals 6. So my answer to 2 divided by 1/3 is 6. And if you see here, these 3/3 right here make up 1. So 1/3, there are 3/3 in 1, and there are 3/3 in another 1. 3 plus 3 is 6. So here we have 6 1/3. Like we said, our answer was 6. Find 7 divided by 2/3, right in simplest form. So 7 divided by 2/3. I should have left that one there. Let's do this. I'm still going to leave my arrows because 7 will still be 7. 2/3 will flip, and the division symbol will become a multiplication. So 7 will stay the same. Let me just double check. 7 divided by 2/3 it is. 7 will still remain 7. 2/3 instead will become the reciprocal, 3/2. I'm not simplifying that 3/2 right now because I am multiplying, so I do need it in fraction form. I'm going to put that 7/1. I'm going to check for cross simplification. 1 and 3 have nothing in common. 2 and 7 have nothing in common. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply straight across. 7 times 3 will be 21. 1 times 2 will be 2. It does say in simplest form. Therefore, I must simplify this improper fraction. 21 divided by 2. That will go in once to 2, 0. Bring down my 1. And it will not go in to 1. So we're going to put a 0. And it will be 10 and 1/2. And that is my answer to 7 divided by 2/3. We're going to do these problems, and we're going to call this one a video. Hopefully we're understanding more and more. Please be aware that more times than not, you are going to have to put it in simplest form. Again, these are going to come to these questions like in the homework here, where it says find the reciprocal of each number. It doesn't say in simplest form. So for like number 3, you put 8/3. I would say it's appropriate. And even the answer sheet says 8/3 right there, so it is appropriate. It doesn't say in simplest form. So for these examples, do the problems to find out. It doesn't say to do it in simplest form. We are going to do them in simplest form regardless. So 6 divided by 1/3. Again, the first number comes down normal. Division problem gets shaken up into multiplication, and we find the flip or reciprocal. This will become 3/1, and instead of me just putting it over 1, since this is a whole number, I'm just going to put 3. And I'm going to multiply 6 times 3, which I know is 18. And that's my answer. For E, 5 divided by 2/3. I'm going to leave this one here. And we said it was 5 divided by 2/3. So 5 will still come down as 5. The division symbol still comes down as multiplication after we shake it up. 2/3 will be flipped and become 3/2. I will need to put that 5/1, and I will need to multiply. I cannot cross simplify here because 5 and 2 have nothing in common. 1 and 3 have nothing in common. We're just multiplying straight across. This will become 15/2. And I believe this is one that we did up here, isn't it? 5 divided by 2/3. We did this one. So let's do it again. This becomes 15/2. I know that the expression or the example didn't say write in simplest form, but let's get in the habit of doing that. That'll be 7 times, it'll be 14, it'll be 7 1/2. And that is my answer. And my last problem is 4 divided by 3/4. First number comes down, division symbol becomes multiplication, and we do the reciprocal, and that'll be 4/3. I will need to put this 4/1. 4 and 3 have nothing in common. 1 and 4 have nothing in common. No cross simplification there. Multiply straight. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. I already know my denominator is going to be 3. 4 times 4 will be 16. Improper fraction. 16 divided by 3. So 3 will not go into 1. 3 will go into 16 5 times, which will be 15. I'll have 1 left over. 5 1/3 is my answer. And that's it. So again, reciprocals are when you flip the fraction. If they ask you for a reciprocal and they don't say in simplest form, leave it as an improper fraction if it is an improper fraction. If it says it needs it in simplest form, put it in simplest form. 9 times out of 10, it will ask you for simplest form. But like as we discussed on the homework, it doesn't ask you for these first 5 questions. So if it becomes an improper fraction, keep it an improper fraction because it doesn't ask you to simplify. If you want to simplify, go for it. I'm not going to ding you. But as always, this has been Mr. P. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, those of you in my class know where to reach me. If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment and I will get back to you at my earliest convenience. This is Mr. P, and I will catch you guys on the next one.